you once, and I'll tell you twice the way I feel.
Hi everybody, welcome along to Shakedown. This is Theo. Now, last week's episode, that was I've been watching it back and I thought to myself, like, hang on, I didn't make certain points I should have made. Now, I've spoken about my own childhood, but it explained it to what's gone on around me and everything. So what I've done on this episode, because I've had people telling me about what I said didn't really put out my points, as it were. I thought what I'd do is that I would go out and I would speak to a few people about their childhoods, about what they have done, and I thought I would share that with you. So so this is episode 29, and I hope you enjoy it. So youth back then, boy. Even when I write this stuff and everything, I still kind of think to myself, boy, I miss my youth. Back in the day, right, you have people that you used to be able to talk to. You have people that would help you if you needed to be helped. You know, you have places that you could actually go to. In my day, I had play schemes, play groups. They used to go to summer schools, and you used to be able to go out there and make friends. I've had people telling me that they used to go to Girl Guides or Scouts. They used to go to churches, church groups, and everything else like that. They would have something that would go along. There's something that you could actually go to make friends, to be confident, and to know that you have a place within your community wherever you're from. And mannerisms were on point back then. You used to be able to talk to people. You used to be able to say hello to anybody, and anybody that would smile at you, you would smile at them. And everybody would more or less see that you are a nice person to be around and everything. So yeah, that was different. What else was different was, family life had a bit more of a tradition. So you used to do things like you used to eat at the table. You used to be able to go to parks, and you used to spend proper family time together. I know it's not that like that nowadays with some families, because everything's just a bit different now. I understand for whatever reason it's like that, but back then family life was so important. I could remember going to with my own family. I could go. I had my grandmother at a house up in Handsworth, and we would go to her house and we would spend their Christmases. We would go and do family dinners and whatnot and everything. It's like that. And it's not so much important now because everybody's disappearing off and doing their own things, which is sad nowadays. But family life was important. So, and education has actually been playing a part. You back then you weren't necessarily taught certain things that's completely relevant into your own life. You don't get prepared about what's next. So back in school, you wasn't necessarily prepared for secondary school or high school, and then you don't get yourself prepared for college, and then in college you don't get prepared for yourself in university. So all these things you had to learn on your own. It's only now where education is becoming a bit more relevant because there's courses out there that's tailored to the things that people would like to do or people would be interested in doing, and they would be a lot more focused in doing that. So yeah, that was what it was like in back then. So you had you was more community. You had better communication. Your family life was on point. Education, yes, you live for, interesting and fun things to do in school, and you hated doing the bored things. It's like that now in a way, but you wasn't necessarily prepared for all those things. You had to learn all those things on your own, as is what you do now, but it's different. And going back to education, well, some of us was about going to school, coming home, and we lived, like I said, we lived for doing awesome things like trips away and all those sort of fun things like that. Some of us excelled in school because some of us were probably pushed, and it goes back to family life. Some of us were really, really pushed to succeed and do well in school. Some people actually got infused and interested by a certain teacher that kind of propels them to do what they wanted to do. And then you got some people that was highly disruptive, and you got people that was the class clowns and everything. You still have that now, but and you kind of think to yourself, would they actually make something of themselves and everything else? And yeah, you wouldn't believe how people are different back then. If they was in school to see what they were like and how they did, how they were, and all the rest of it. But for education, yes, it was important for us to kind of learn things and try and be inspired by things. Um, I myself had a different education altogether because of the fact I was bullied and I went from school to school to school to school, and that kind of messed my way of thinking about the world and experiencing about the world. But with other people that's actually been there from the beginning and understood what they needed to do and how they wanted to do it, and they was able to progress and develop into the cell to how they were, we can be really respectful, At least at least we got education, and education was really important back then because we had to try and learn as much as we could about the world. Some of us were living in sheltered. Some of us were living in had a sheltered childhood. Some of us were free spirits, and some of us were were going off the rails that you knew that something could actually happen to them. That's how it happened. Uh, growing up back then. Right. So youth nowadays, now you become a bit more street smart. Now, what I mean by this is that you learn certain things out on the streets, literally, but you learn socially, how to say this to people, how to say that to people, how to communicate in a sort of way that not only none of the people would be any of the wiser with slang and so on and so forth. Um, it has a way of learning how to kind of deal things on the street, so you know where to go, you know who to talk to, you know how to get things done. So becoming street smart is one of those things that you nowadays do. Also, social media has become a big part of communicating with others nowadays. It started with just going on to MSN Messenger. You remember that? And then and then you started a few websites. So it was on MySpace, High Five, Bebo, all those sort of sites, or even Netlog, if you remember that. If you remember that. And now you got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. Those are the points of communication that most youth people nowadays would actually go and actually communicate with. They can access more stuff online, or they can find a person online that's to do with a relevant thing. If you're going to go into education, they can find stuff online. They can just not just read a book anymore, but that's what they were able to do. They've been tech savvy. Nowadays, that's what it is. Like we had back in the day, all those brick phones and all those Nokias and those silly little ringtones that you used to have to be able to make sure that you're sounding exactly like the music. But it's dwarfed from that now into smartphones becoming much more like computers, small computers. So it's all those sort of things. Also, kids have different personas these days. So they could be nice and pleasant when they're at home, or they can be really difficult to handle. I remember seeing this YouTube video where this guy, no, not this guy, this young boy, who was being entirely disruptive and disrespectful to his mother on the bus. He was effing and blinding and all those sort of things because he was saying, oh yeah, don't sit next to me, I don't want you sitting next to me, I don't want you doing this to me, and like his mother wouldn't have any of it. You think that would happen if that was my mother? My mother would have clipped me by the ear, or she would have punished me big time. She would just not stand for it. And but the thing is, though, my point is, you get youths that do um talk to people in a certain way that comes across as disrespectful these days, and it's never nice when you have people that's like that. You have people even stealing from others these days. It's never nice to look at. Um, yeah, so youth nowadays don't even take the responsibility of all this, or don't take certain responsibility even if they did something bad, because they know that they can't actually be punished, they can't be disciplined. Ever since the smacking laws have been banned and all that sort of thing, um, like it becomes really really hard now for parents to even punish their children in a certain way that it hurts. I used to hate it when I got things taken away. So, and I would get privileges taken away, and I know it hurt me. So like, but I can't really speak for other people, but that's what it was like. So I think really it's changed a lot. Those are the things that's changed a lot. And also, you got people who's got different personas, as I said. It's so hard for even the youth nowadays to kind of make a life together as well. Not even know that education is like kind of making things more relevant, so that you got people that would actually be interested in doing a certain course and be able to go into a certain career or a certain path. You got apprenticeships these days, so that they can go out there, learn and earn as they go. So it's all those sorts of things now that kids have more accessible to. They got more choice than we ever did growing up. So it's all those sorts of things that's happened. That's all that's changed. If you do like or what you hear and what you have heard from me today, comment below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you disagree or agree with it. And yeah, I just think that with the youth nowadays, yes, it's very very different, because we go out there, it's not as safe as it used to be. Kids nowadays, youth nowadays, really, they got this much choice, and they got this access to these technology a lot more than what we had, and everything, and they talk to people in a very very different way nowadays. But I'm not saying that all youth are completely bad. There's some good out there. Some are like really interested into doing certain things. Even family life as well. It's one of those things that's been it's been changing over the course of time. As I said before, you used to have people sitting at the table, eating at the table, and doing family things. Nowadays, it's different, because everybody's gone off and doing their different things and everything. It's not always bad. I'm sure that there are reasons why, but a lot of it has changed now, and I just wanted to get that point across to say what it's like for youth nowadays. So, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Shakedown. I'll be back next week with another episode, another topic to talk about. And yeah, I've just recently started my Facebook and my Instagram pages. So you can find me on Shakedown 2018, that's for Facebook, That's the username, and also at shakedown dash underscore 18. So yeah, look out for those, and because you'll be right up to date with the latest goings on that's concerning Shakedown, and also I'll be posting regularly on those sites. And yeah, it's been good to talk about this because I think this has been a monumental shift over the last few years. Even generations before, I think obviously things are done in a different way, obviously, but in regards to how things are nowadays, the way that we can access stuff and having technology and all of those sorts of things, how different everybody's leading their lives, you know, it's culminating to all of that. But I think it's also kind of important to kind of understand, depends on where you are, where you're from, the community you're from, and all that sort of thing. It molds you up into who you are today. But one thing that it should be really focusing on is just understanding that where your roots are and where your culture's from. So it's important that we learn all that stuff. So I'll be back next week, and yeah, keep it real. Peace.